Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agri-tourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agri-tourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agri-tourist in you. It's Jen Ross, your Agri-Tourist Podcast host. My former organic vegetable and sunflower farm had a few revenue channels. The one channel that probably required the most labor were the numerous farmers markets. It was so exciting to make a new connection and add a new market, especially with our mobile farm stand truck. And being a marketer at heart, creating new connections was my favorite part. However, I recall the anticipation of market days. Waking up super early to harvest, clean, prep, pack the truck, drive to the destination, move all the produce and sunflowers out of the truck to the market destination, set up the market, sell and connect with customers, pack up all the stuff that wasn't sold, head back to the farm, unpack, sort everything out for donation, sale, or compost, and then think about what we needed to prep for the next day. I really didn't mind the work at all. I actually enjoyed it. But was it worth the revenue it was bringing in, or could my time be used more wisely and economically? The answer was yes, and Megan Neubauer describes it perfectly in her book, Pick Your Own Farming, Free Yourself from Farmers Markets and Join the Agritourism Revolution. Let's jump right in and learn why agritourism became a no-brainer for her farm and transitioned her to a very profitable Texas farm. How are you?
This is rough. This is the end of a day at the end of April in which I spent the entire day trying to keep up with. I spent the whole day on the UTB spring because it's going to rain at the end of the week. So I've got to do my micronutrients and my beneficial bugs and everything. Anyway, so it not my best look, but
it's all good.
We're here.
It's all good. Yes. Welcome to the Agri-Tourist Podcast. I'm so happy to be interviewing you because when I heard you on another podcast and I can't remember which one. And after I heard it, I bought your book and I read your book. Yes. It was like exactly, it was speaking to me. So your book, Pick Your Own Farming, and Free Yourself from Farmers Markets and Join the Agritourism Revolution. So before we get into your book, because there's a lot in your book. So tell me about you. You know, I know you work too. You have a whole career other than farming. So tell me about your backstory a little bit, and then we'll start talking about farming.
Yeah, we didn't start off, my dad and I, who's my business partner in the farm, we did not start off our careers as farmers. I actually went to school for biology. I was in bench research, and I was in biotech for a while, and then I was in academics for a while. So all kinds of different, lab bench research settings. I was managing a pediatric oncology lab at UT Southwestern Medical Center when we made the leap. So, there's a lot of science involved in what we do. So it's not so different, but I get to be outside now, which is nice.
Yes, it is.
And my dad was an engineer, so that helps too on the farm. That's for sure. He can fix anything. He can figure out how things work. So we're a good pair.
That you're an excellent pair. That's because my few years on the farm, I mean, there's so much science involved in farming.
Yeah.
And
more and more And they're finding out, we haven't even scratched the surface on how to get really healthy soil biology and how much that impacts the health of your plant and ultimately your yields. So it's been really interesting. We're getting deeper into that now.
So what made you decide you purchased or are you leasing land?
My dad purchased the land, and really my dad and my husband had been looking for a while on some land to purchase. DFW, the Metroplex, is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And so the sprawl is just massive. Everybody's coming from California. It's kind of wild just how quickly, it's like a couple thousand people, not a day. But anyway, people are moving here very quickly from all over the place. So we wanted to invest in a piece of land. We found a really beautiful 28-acre property that my dad purchased and put in his trust. So we have been on that since 2011, and it's really remarkable how much things have changed around us. The suburb growth, like where there were fields of wheat, I mean, for acres and acres and acres and acres, there are houses everywhere now. So the investment was good, and people are grateful that we're there and we're so close, really only 30 minutes north of Dallas.
Well, so was it a farm when you purchased
I think
it?
he had farmed on it. The fellow that we bought it from had run his own. He was kind of a one-man band. He ran some cattle there, so he had it set up. I think it had been cotton back in the day. Collin County used to grow lots of that kind of stuff. So it was not a working farm at all. It was just pasture.
Okay, so what did you and your dad have to do?
So when we first started out, we had decided really early on that we needed a tractor. And my dad was in his early 60s at the time, right? That was when we started. So we're like, we need to figure out how to make this manageable for the two of us and not have to hire help and not have to rely on family and all of that. So we got a raised bedder, plastic mulch layer and a transplanter and a good sized tractor. The farm is down actually a hillside, and it drops in elevation about 40 feet from the top to the bottom. So the first thing we did was have some guys come in with really big equipment, much bigger than the tractor, and level off 3 terraces down the hillside. So you really don't even know it's there from the road. You're looking at the back side of the hill, and then it slopes down with our terraces on the other side. It's really pretty. So that was the first thing we did, and we tried to get them all slope the right way for drainage and all of that. The soil is okay. It's not bad. It's clay, so it's hard to work, but it's very mineral rich and all of that. It's come a long way since we've been working on it, throwing plants into it constantly, cover crops and all of that. So it has improved a lot, but the learning curve and the just getting started was pretty steep, honestly.
Yep. How many acres of the land are you farming now?
Our annuals are about 2 acres, and the blackberries we have between 2 and 3 acres. So it's quite a bit for 2 people.
Yes, that is. It is. So when you first started, you were doing farmers markets, and did you have a CSA when you first started?
We only dabbled. So we would do little shares, pop-ups here and there, but we really didn't have the infrastructure for a CSA. We've never had a walk-in cooler. We don't have the table space. We don't have a building. We have an old barn that has no walls, and you can see the sky through the ceiling in places. But yeah, we just did not have the infrastructure for CSA. So it was just kind of grow as much as you can. Get it home, get it into garage fridges, get it into the house, mist it down so it's cool, get it to the farmer's market and get it out. Keep it moving.
And so how did that go for you?
Ugh, better at times than others. There's a whole chapter in the book about my thoughts on farmers markets. And I think at some point they were much more successful for farmers than they are now. I think the bubble has just popped on that. There's so many ways to get food now that there aren't many people who are willing to get up on Saturday morning and go out to the farmer's market. There aren't enough anyway. There really aren't enough.
Right. I always felt well, there was just so much labor involved, so much transportation involved. Then you had to worry about the vegetables, how they looked by the time they get there. And then one other thing, and this happened before COVID. I always felt everyone wanted you to join a farmer's market. Like they grabbed onto the farm because they had everything else, but they a lot of times did not have good quality vegetables. But one thing I always said to the business partner I had at the time was, we don't own these customers. If this farmer's market goes away, because we had a really lucrative one inside of a hospital. And so getting in and out was crazy because you had to go to the loading dock and go up this elevator. Like literally, it was like, I'm not kidding you, 10 trips. And we had sunflowers. So it was terrible. It was like, one of those things you had to really be, get your mind ready for. But we would sell out. But again, the work involved. But I always said, if they decide they can't do this for some reason, hence COVID happened a year later, or if for some reason, someone in the hospital says you can't do this anymore, yes, you've retained some customers from that, but you pretty much lose your customer base because they're there working and shopping. So I always felt like you were at the beck and call of whoever's market it was. And with the CSA, we had a good structure for the CSA, and we broke it into spring, summer, fall, which dissected our customers. Like it was a better targeting for us. And, that worked out better, but I owned those customers. Those were our customers. But at the same time, CSA was also very intense with labor and stressful when a product wasn't ready in time or didn't come out good, and what are we replacing it with? So when I read your book about U-Pick, I was excited to see how you were doing it because there are a lot of U-Picks I'm on Long Island in New York, and out east we have several U-Pick farms, more the bigger, those, the big either fruit farms or apple farms, that type of stuff. But no one is doing it quite like you've described in your book. So when I read your book, I was really excited about that because in my head, I had this idea, but I was always like questioning how to execute that in my next round of farming. So tell me a little bit about how you do it. Just give me kind of, because obviously my biggest concern always when I read your book was, are these people going to destroy the plants? Like that is
everybody's biggest concern. I get it. I mean, it was my biggest concern too at first, but then when you're rolling and when you see it in action, I just can't express to you how much less of it there is than you think. It really is so much. And you have to cultivate that culture, right? We purposefully limit the number of people allowed in so that it's never a melee. It's always pretty calm. I think that kind of stuff is important. But yeah, it happens, but it happens so much less. When you can see the scale of produce that you're able to move with Pick Your Own, like I'm selling, say, $5,000 of produce on a Saturday, and then I go through, didn't have to pick or process a piece of it, right? But when we go through the field after people leave to clean up, it may be 2 baskets worth. It may be $100 worth of plants, trampled plants, or produce discarded, dropped, perfect tomatoes on the ground, whatever. It happens every day. But it's just a drop in the bucket of the actual revenue that you can get. I don't think we've ever had more than like $100 wasted.
That's terrific. Yeah, that was the one thing that popped into my head, that just that destruction of plants, because I've been apple picking and see what people do. But I think, like you said, you're controlling it through the number of people. Yeah. I love the fact that you have tickets and they sell out. You have it you do it in a very controlled way, in a very smart way.
Very controlled.
Tell me about how you evolved to that process, because I know you did a lot of surveying and you've done a tremendous job in customer management and figuring out what really has worked. I have a marketing background, so I love what you've done.
Oh,
That's
right
why
on. Yeah.
I was so attracted to everything you did. And like I said, the surveys and how you use your feedback has been tremendous. So congratulations on all that.
Thank you.
Very impressed by it.
It's that has been based, it's come more out of instinct than anything else, and observing what the very strong reaction that our customers have to coming out. I mean, our customers are taking pictures with me and Dad every day, and they're bringing us baked goods, and they're, it's just very, very strong community that people have a very strong reaction to being on the farm and being in this safe, beautiful, clean, healthy place together. It brings out the best in people. Honestly, I love it. It's such a wonderful place to be. But we started off the first year very small. We said, well, the very first year we had only done the blackberries, and people came out to pick the blackberries. We were taking everything else to the farmer's market because it didn't even occur to us to try to get people to pick everything else. So as soon as they got there that first year, they wanted to pick everything. And they're like, when are the tomatoes ready? When do we get to pick that? When do we get to pick that? And we were like, okay, well, let's think about that, because I didn't have that in my plan. So over the winter, we kind of figured out how we could do that. And we'd want to have stuff close together so everybody could, you could pick as much as possible and not, only be open for okra in July. So we kind of, tried to get what we thought would be a good looking season out of that. It just started very small. We were only doing, I think, about 40 people an hour. It was just me and Dad. We were the only people. I was cashier and he was everything else. So we were charging, I think, $2 a head for admission. We weren't taking admission online. We weren't taking payments online because I didn't want to deal with refunds and all of that online. But it turned out that about a third of the people no-showed when you do that. So I had this long line of people who wanted to come and no-shows, which was tough. But once we switched to taking payment ahead of time online, that virtually went away. So we learned a lot that first year. Okay, we could plant more of this. People really liked this. Nobody picked that. And we have just fine-tuned year on year what we're growing and the relative amounts of what we're growing. And then we have just beefed it up every year, just a little bit, very organically, to where we now cannot take care of any more plants, like absolutely no more plants. We don't want to hire. So we're optimizing the best possible yield and the best possible sort of picking efficiency of that yield. Like I would say in 2023, I would say up to a quarter of the produce was still culled, either mostly because it didn't get picked and went over, right? Yellow cucumbers, 8-pound zucchinis, that kind of thing. So we are still refining that, but that's it. I think that we'll get there. So we started to do bigger picks, tailored the stuff that we were growing, the amount that we were growing. COVID is the thing that really pushed us awareness, because it was like the only thing people felt was safe to do at grocery stores and all of that, right? So since then, we've just been building our little following year on year. I mean, ultimately, we only need close to 10,000 people over the 8-week season. It's not that many. We're in a city of millions. And I think a lot of people are in the position that I was in and that you were in. I talk to a lot of farmers now, especially since the book came out, that are like, I can't make it work. I'm working so hard and I can't make it work at the farmer's market, CSA. You can't physically process enough food and get it sold to make it work. But with this, we're probably growing 10 times as much food as we could ever. And we would never have the time to process this much food without this kind of model. So I think a lot of people could really benefit from doing it this way, which is obviously why I wrote the book.
And so what has the reaction been from farmers? Have you you said you talked to farmers. Have you had farmers adopt it and consult with you about this? I'm
doing a little consulting. Yeah. what's interesting is that the book came out in December. So this is kind of the first season. So I have a couple of farms that I'm following that have reached out and said, I love the book. I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, I got their socials and I'm following them, right, to see. One thing I'm really excited about is with seeing other farms do it. Like, I want to know what they figure out that I haven't, right? Like, teach me what does your customer base teach you? What have you figured out that you can do better than we have?
Are these farms that are executing based on, your book, are they in different parts of the country or are they more closer to you?
I've heard from people as far away as Peru,
Oh, wow. Okay.
Canada, Australia, the sunflower farm in Australia that reached out. Yeah, we have a very international following at the farm. It's interesting how, yeah, it's very, very international. We get people from all over. You can hear different languages just anywhere you stand, which is nice, right? To see just the diversity and that everybody's being nice. It's just a really happy, diverse place. But yeah, and then of course there are a lot of domestic ones. A lot in the Northeast, actually.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, if I was you, I'd be interested in seeing what works and what doesn't work, especially in different parts of the country. Because one thing, I've been trying to think this through. I'm in the process of looking somewhere in the Northeast for property. By me, it's impossible and it's extremely expensive. So I would have to go probably to Connecticut or Massachusetts or upstate New York. And, I was looking at the criteria that the access to land near a metro or tourist area, which by me is not difficult. But still, there are a lot of farms. So it's like, and it's just, well, I guess let's talk about the agri-tourist versus the farmer's market customer. Give me your perspective on the difference.
I think that an agri-tourist is a farmer's market shopper on steroids, pretty much. Like where, a farmer's market shopper is willing to get up on Saturday morning and go to the farmer's market. Agri-tourist is getting up on Saturday morning, putting all their kids in the car and coming 30 miles to me, not the farmer's market in their neighborhood. And they bought tickets ahead of time, right? And spending an hour with me working in the sun, right? So we've found that the number one thing that people are looking for when they come to see us is forming a personal relationship with the farmer and supporting local agriculture. And honestly, that took me by surprise that was the number one thing. Like I would have thought, my guess was it was either going to be the freshest produce, which was number 2, or finding something fun to do, which was number 3. But there is this really, and not in everybody, of course, not everybody is an agri-tourist, but those who are really strongly pulled to the farm and really deeply want to get to know me and Dad and support us. And I just found that to be a really surprisingly fulfilling aspect of it. So we do get some, and I poached some of my old farmers market customers that now come out to me every Saturday instead of going to the market. But we also find that there's a lot of agri-tourists who are just moms and kids, right? A whole lot. Mom and, a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a baby strapped on. And they may pick, 1 bell pepper each. And there's a mangled cherry tomato that the baby chewed in half when they come up to the register. But everybody has a good time, and that's what's important.
So how many seasons now have you been doing this?
This is the 7th, unbelievably.
7th. Oh, wow. Oh, great. So do you do you see any trends happening, especially since COVID, I guess? Do you see has the type of customer changed a little? Has what they're buying changed a little? Are there any different trends that you're seeing over 7 years? Because 7 years is a good amount of time for you to notice some differences. Or is where they're coming from logistically, has that changed at all?
We have really worked hard to fine tune our customer base, right? So a large portion, I couldn't guess what it is, but a whole lot of the people who come to see us come often, right? And so there's the people who come often and there's the people who come once. So I kind of have them divided like that. And I want to cultivate each of those separately and making sure that the people who are really coming for their groceries to us have access all the time. So that's why we started doing like a season pass so that we could make sure that they could always come.
That's a fantastic idea, by the way.
Yes, it's working really great.
Very impressed with that one.
It's working really great. I did a weekday. I discovered that Saturday morning, season pass people want best pick. So that's 9 a.m. first hour of the weekend. So I really can't take any more people on Saturday morning, but Sunday we get a quarter of the season passes. And during the week we got even fewer than that. So I started doing a weekday only pass as well. And I sold far more of those than I expected to. So that will boost my weekday sales, I hope, because those are the folks who are going to consistently pick a $50 basket, right? And use it up and come back and pick another $50 basket every week. So in terms of trends, I don't know. I feel like we in the grand scheme of things, we see so few people. We're seeing 250 a day, but I probably know, I don't know, or repeat customers, I would guess, are maybe a third of those. Yeah, I don't know that I've seen any real trends. The thing that affects our revenue more than anything is the production side and is the sort of the hospitality side, as far as like if the plants are super healthy looking and there are no split tomatoes and blah blah blah, people are going to pick more of them. But if the grass is high or, the downy mildew is out of control, whatever, people are not. So we tend to focus more on the plant and the hospitality, the property maintenance stuff. That affects the revenue more than anything.
So for those one-time customers, what is your goal with do you try to convert them?
For sure. Come back and see us at the end of checkout every day. Come back and see us. We do. I still think that we have succeeded, even if we only have somebody who comes out once, as long as they have a good time. We have this tremendous platform because people have chosen to come out to us and to, participate in this farm. It was not thrust upon them. They've chosen to come here. So we want to show them a really good time so that they see like, oh, I like going to farms. I like local agri. Are there any other farms in the area? That's the kind of thing we see a lot of at checkout. So even if they never come back to me, I just hope that we are reaching them and connecting them a little bit with, even if not local agriculture, at least gardening, growing plants, healthy food, organic, that kind of thing. I think that we're building subconscious even bridges there that, especially in the kids, right? They're so malleable. And the way that you reach kids is with a fun sensory experience. So you get these little kids out there and their hands are in the dirt and they're filthy and they've had a great time and they're sweaty until it gets to 105 and then they're miserable. But we're all miserable at that point. But they have that memory. And I hear from people every year. I get emails that are like, my kid will not stop asking me when the farm opens. When does the farm open this year? Well, my kid still talks about picking blackberries at your farm 4 years ago. Right. So I know that we're reaching people on this deep level. And that's really, I even if you only come once, I got a little memory in there.
That's terrific. That really is terrific. Talk to me about, I know obviously this is in your book, but the criteria that you have a list of. You had five things on your list of criteria for someone to consider before they make a decision to either transition or start their farm in this way. So talk to us about that.
We came to that list based on what we think are the five, what it happened to be five, but what are the things that we have that if we didn't have, I don't think that we would make it. And so the first of those was, like you mentioned earlier, land close to a city. And at 30 miles seems to be kind of the sweet spot, 30 or 40 miles. People will go further, depending on what you have, right? I mean, if around here, people will go 100 miles for strawberries. So it kind of depends on what you have. Another one is a hospitable climate. I'm on the edge of that because it's very, very hot. And we start at 8. We'll pick at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and 10 a.m. I want everybody out of here by 11 o'clock and back in their cars, back in the AC. You know, it's very stressful to have people out when it's 105 and 98% humidity. So further south than here, and I know like there's Froberg down in where are they? They're by Galveston, I think. I don't know how they do it. They're picking already. It's April, but yeah. So you need a hospitable climate. I also don't know how that works out with what is available, like what's in season. So I'm very curious to hear from these other farms who are trying it in different parts of the country. Like how does it work for you? What does your picking season window look like? When is it?
That was something, yeah, that was triggering thoughts for me because I was thinking back, okay, what do we grow when and what quote unquote 8-week period could it be? Because I also noticed a trend where I live is when kids go back to school, it was like, that's it. Like people just, it's
They're
like,
they forget about you.
Yes.
Everybody asks us if we will do it in the fall because we're done by middle of July. That's the fat season here for us. Is like June is the big month. May you're starting up. June's the big month. By July, middle of July, everything's burnt up. So everyone's like, well, you could just do fall season and plant for that. I'm like, I don't think so. I just don't think it would. And the kids being back in school is the number one thing that I'm worried about.
That always impacted us. Impacted us.
So back to that list, it's you need to have the capital to start a farm. You need to be able to buy the stuff you need to have because it took us a very long time to, I mean, we started off with some big equipment, but then you get to the little stuff, right? Where you're like, I need more Agribon. I need more, it's $1,000 here and $1,000 there. And just really adds up. So you've got to start with a little pile of money and stuff to be able to farm well. And that leads me into the next one, which is the ability to grow really nice stuff. Because that's the number one thing that people value about coming to our farm is that our produce is really nice. And we work our butts off on making it really nice. I don't get to sort it, right? It's got to be nice on the plant, and the plant's got to look nice. Like I can't really get away with anything. So we're very, very active, and it's what we spend all of our time doing, right? Because we don't have to do the other plants with the harvesting and all that stuff. So we spend all of our time on the plant health. And then finally, you need to really like people. You need to really enjoy the company of people, or at least, tolerate them. But it's a lot. People always want to talk to the farmer. They always do. They want dad is hugging little kids. He doesn't know every Saturday morning, right? Telling the story of the farm 500 times and repeating yourself. And not everybody who comes is nice. You gotta have that hospitality, have that hospitality gene, because in our reviews, when you look through our reviews, like our names are in there over. People only came one time. Remember our names, and they talk about how nice we were, right? That just has a lot of value for people, especially in a business with kids. And we do see a lot of kids.
Absolutely. Well, that's terrific. I liked your list. I thought it was very smart. To go back to the deciding what to grow, you definitely avoid stuff like kale, anything that people have to bunch. So you're focused more on easy picking. What about, do you do cucumbers? I can't remember if you do. Mm-hmm. So how about picking, that's one of those ones where if you don't pick it right, the whole vine comes with you.
And it happens. There was with the kale, the thing was I used to sell a lot of it at the farmer's market, and people just are not comfortable picking it. Whatever, there is a barrier. where people are not comfortable. Anybody who did come up with kale would come up with like 4 leaves. I'm like, you're not going to be able to do, and it's not even a smoothie worth of kale. So we finally just gave it up. We do garlic, onions, beets, carrots. You honestly can't grow enough carrots. Cucumbers, squash and zucchini, cherry tomatoes, big slicing tomatoes, cantaloupes, flowers. I'm kind of expanding my flowers a little bit this year. I think that might be it.
Wait, so what is it about the carrots that
It's just very popular. I mean, I think that the kids get it because they're kind of, unless you're a farmer and have picked 500,000 carrots, we have a technique, right? Like thumbs down, wiggle, pull straight up. But you'll see a lot of greens ripped off. And so we put little shovels down there so that you can rescue your carrot. And when they finally get it, it's very rewarding for them. So anytime a carrot the carrot comes out and the iPhone comes out right behind it. Mom is like, hold it up. So it's the number one thing I ask kids at checkout what their favorite thing was to pick. And it's almost always carrots.
Okay. That's great. And flowers, you said you are doing some different flowers. What do you do?
I am. I've heard from a bunch of you pig flower farmers since the book. And so I've kind of picked their brains on, like, I was just doing sunflowers, but I'm like, I could do better than this. Let's try to mix it up and put some cosmos and some zinnias and some snapdragons in there. So we'll see how it goes. Flowers are tough because people want to pick them open, right? It's very hard for me anyway, to get a perfect flower open. Although people will pick damaged or bug bitten, whatever stuff all the time. It's kind of amazing what they will pick that you could never sell at the farmer's market. And we don't charge them. Just say, like, do you want this? You can have it. But with the flowers, you'll pick them. You want to pick them just partially opened or whatever. If you've probably grown way more flowers than I ever have.
Well, we were pretty much doing sunflowers, and people that was probably the most profitable thing.
Really?
Yes. People would, especially in the hospital, people would spend so much money on sunflowers. And then, you have this beautiful organic produce there. And you're like, I just couldn't understand it. But, it was what it was. So, I mean, they were beautiful, but I always never understood that. I know.
Don't you eat?
I don't know, but it worked. So, I mean, we would bring, there was like 5 bunches in each container, and we'd bring almost like 20 containers.
Oh my God.
They'd sell
them all. Wow.
We couldn't carry anymore. We couldn't fit it in the truck. It was just.
What could you sell a bunch for? How many stems?
It was 5 stems, I believe. And I can't remember what we were selling it for then. I don't remember if it was 15.
Wow.
It was something like that. Don't quote me. Maybe it was 12 or 15. We kept it, we kept it reasonable. People just, they were gone. And it really had nothing to do with being in a hospital. It wasn't like they were giving it to people in the, like they just were buying it for themselves.
We wouldn't even such an impulse buy, right? Like, I'm not thinking about food right now, but flowers,
But we would be in the elevator and be selling them right off.
That's so funny.
It was funny. It never understood it. And then, but sometimes we have different types of sunflowers, like just some different varieties. Nope, they want the traditional.
So that's something that we see a lot as well. Is I don't do. I'm down to now almost 3/4 of the squash I grow is green zucchini. And a farmer knows that, like, there's every shape and color of squash under the sun, summer squash, but they want green zucchini. So give them what they want.
Yeah,
they want orange carrots.
Yes.
I only grow orange carrots now. It's very interesting in that way. They want what's familiar.
Yeah, when we do a lot of education classes, you teach kids about the rainbow carrots and all that, but they're used to what's in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And they want that familiar, they want it to be familiar. So, yeah, it is funny. You kind of have to go back to basics.
Yeah. Well, the orange tastes the best anyway, in my opinion. But something that takes me back to something you mentioned earlier, which was making sure that people are picking things right. And what we have dialed down into is that there's nothing that we grow that isn't edible at every size. So even a bell pepper that is picked this big is edible, right? So I feel good about somebody taking it. A cantaloupe will ripen off the vine, right? But the only thing that we grow that doesn't ripen off the vine or is edible at any size are the blackberries. But that's like we have very little. We don't get very many people picking those incorrectly. But yeah, otherwise, that's the best insurance that we found is just to keep it edible and simple, because we have a lot of signs. Signs are the best offense, I guess. I have signs in my cucumbers now that say move the leaves. Because if you don't have a sign that says move the leaves, a lot of people will just stand there and look down and all you see are leaves, right? The cukes are laying on the ground underneath all that beautiful leaf cover. So not everybody reads them, but it helps.
Yes, it definitely does. Chapter 8, I loved, by the way, because I just
you know what's funny? My editor, I turned the book in at 7 chapters, and my editor said, "You're not done. You need to wrap this up. You need to wrap up." And it took me like a week to write that 2-page thing.
But it's extremely impactful. So she was right. It did. And so I just want to comment on a few things and just get your comments on it. I liked what you said. What we actually set out to do was make a living growing food, and I still believe that's the critical foundation upon which other good things become possible. Agritourism made Pure Land Farm profitable, yes, but while the dollars we earn only benefit us, agritourism helps all farmers by raising awareness of regenerative local farming, making personal connections between the public and the agriculture community, and fostering intentional consumers. I thought those sentences were amazing. So I think you really captured it there. I don't know if you just want to say anything about what you wrote. I mean, you captured it well here, but
I think that that's going to be our legacy. And I think that's the biggest impact that we can make, is that we're reaching so many just regular people and just sprinkling local agriculture into their lives, right? Like there aren't, my regulars are one thing, but for the vast majority of our visitors, it's an unusual thing for them to do. It's a very small part of their lives, but it was absent before they came to the farm, right? So I really think that that's going to be that's the biggest impact that we're going to make, is by fostering those intentional consumers and people who want to get out and say, what other farms are around? They ask us at the checkout every day. I'm like, oh, you can get raw milk from Nana and Pops. Here's their number. You can go, see my friend Pam in Athens for strawberries. You can do, whatever. Yeah.
And then there is a desperate need for more small farmers to regeneratively restore our lands and build robust local food systems. And there are many eager hopefuls who would love to pursue it as a career, but we cannot continue pretending the current model is working, which says a lot. And I really...
Farmers markets are... Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think your book, has a very clear message about that. And I think you were brave to go out there and say that, because farmers markets, like you said, are not working.
I don't understand how anybody makes money. And I don't feel like we should, as farmers, have to eat that we get to be outside and we get to work our butts off and we can barely pay our bills. Like, it's just that I have a visceral reaction against that after many years of working my butt off and not taking any money home. This has been, we're at there's no rolls, right? Like, we're not rich from doing this, but it pays. It actually pays. Like, we can actually take money home and be comfortable. And I'm the only farmer that I know in that position. And I know how hard farmers work. Like, we have been there. I could name a dozen farmers I know who are like, I don't know why I'm still doing this. And our farmers markets were a revolving door and especially like the people in their late 20s and their 30s, like, we're never going to make it, right? At the farmers market. And I don't know what they're doing now, but I'm hopeful that more farmers being able to actually make some money will keep more people farming and get more people into farming.
Yep, exactly. And one of the other things you wrote, a final word, it's easy to feel very small and overwhelmed working outside under the great wide Texas sky, but never underestimate the impact you have as a person that cares for a patch of earth. The opportunity to steward a piece of land, however big or small, is an awesome gift and responsibility. Our earth, we need more people doing this. And I even say to people, garden, learn how to garden, take the time, grow a few things. Doesn't have to be a farm, it doesn't have to be a huge garden. Take a small plot in your backyard and learn how to grow some things.
Go to your botanic garden, go to your local sanctuary, go to your wildlife place, go just be outside and appreciate the beautiful, incredible, awesome world that we have that is rapidly changing, right? And something I think about agritourism is that the more people that we get to care, the more we are building a base of advocacy for the kinds of policies that support more local agriculture, that support, the policies and legislation that will help more people be able to actually farm sustainably, right? And regeneratively. And the big farms, right? The big ag farms that we need to transition to regen, that the system is not built for them to, it's a big ship. It's hard to turn. But I think that we can build this consumer demand by reaching people the way that we do on our farm, one by one, in a personal, face-to-face way, right? Human to human, having this shared experience together outside.
Yep. Well, I love it. I love the book. It was just very well done. So thank you for writing.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
I'm excited to find my piece of property and implement. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time for this podcast.
You're so welcome. My pleasure. And please let me know when you do find that land, because I would like to go on the journey with you.
I definitely will. All right. Awesome. You have a great night, Megan. Thank you so much.
You as well.
I hope our Agri-Tourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agri-tourist.com. Until next time. As we are learning from many of our farmers and entrepreneurs, strong connections help propel our visions. Through my interview with Lisa Chase from the University of Vermont Extension and Vermont Tourism Research Center, I was connected to an exciting and new organization called the Global Agri-Tourism Network, or GAN for short. The global network is made up of agritourism stakeholders from around the world. They include farmers and ranchers, researchers, educators, community planners, policymakers, agricultural service providers, and tour operators, among others. It is currently free to join, so if you have any interest in agritourism, check them out at agritourism.edu/GAN, or just Google Global Agritourism Network. The link will be in our show notes as well. You never know, this global network may help you take your agritourism vision to the next level.